I feel very, very relaxed and present, and it's exciting. I've learned a lot. I mean, this is nothing I've um, ever played with before. I've done a lot of Feldenkrais and a lot of lessons, but never with this intention and attention to the ears. And so that was new, novel, and intriguing. It makes me want to do more.
Hey there, it's Seth. Welcome to another Somatic Wisdom session here on the Embodied Dialogue podcast. In today's episode, I'm working with Suzanne, who is someone who has been involved with the Feldenkrais method, yoga. She has plenty of awareness. She did not come to me with aches or pains, but with a curiosity to learn more about the role of hearing in her overall body awareness. And we worked with her to get a better sense of how does hearing fit into my sense of posture, just being present in the moment. And then we were also able to make use of those discoveries to improve the rotation of her spine and to especially wake up the top vertebra of the spine. And so I think this is a really fun session, and you can follow along, and I think you'll get an improvement as well. And just a little bit of a taste of how I work with individual clients. And of course, if you're interested in working with me, you can get in touch. I'll have information below this video about how you can do that. Here we go. Let's jump into the session. Welcome, everyone, to the Embodied Dialogue podcast. My name is Seth Dellinger, and I'm here with Suzanne today, and we're going to do a Somatic Wisdom session. So in a moment, I'm just going to ask Suzanne to say a little bit more about what she's interested in, but I have done some work exploring the relationship of hearing to basically improving function in other ways, and Suzanne got interested in that and wanted to find out more. She's also recently had some troubles with her hand. We don't know if those two subjects will come together in any logical way, but it's just worth noticing. But Suzanne, I just want to welcome you, and anything more you'd like to say about your curiosity?
No, not really. I'm glad to be here today, and I would love to know ways both to improve hearing and explore the relationship of what you were talking about, of the auditory sense, which for me is perhaps weaker than the visual and the felt bodily sense.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who's sighted anyway, we all tend to be biased towards vision over hearing. One of the things that is just, I put out a video on my channel recently where I discussed an essay by Moshe Feldenkrais. It's called On the Primacy of Hearing. And one of the things that he points out is when we see what's in front of us. But when we hear, we can hear in every direction, 360 degrees. And so, yeah, it can be really interesting to just sort of drop that habit we all have of relying on our eyes and doing other things. And one of the things that he suggests people do is to just blindfold themselves and sort of move around their house for a while. But also what I would say is, I'm not entirely sure if I know how to improve hearing, but I think we can definitely improve listening. And the distinction would be that there's some intention. There's all kinds of sound in the world around me, right? But kind of I think a relevant example, if you go to the restaurant with your friend and it's busy, you're listening to what your friend is saying and you can hear the other sounds, but you're focusing your attention in such a way that you're with your friend and you stay with your friend. So listening has something to do with that. It's a focused attention with our auditory sense. And I think that's what we can work with and improve. So does that
Sounds good.
make sense to you? Okay. Well, so I know you just had a kind of an open-ended curiosity. So what I'd love to do is just a few little experiments and try them out and see what you notice. And then from there, we'll just see what we get most interested in and follow that thread. Sound good?
Perfect.
Okay, so what I'd like to do to begin with is just sort of a general check-in that isn't focused on hearing particularly, but we'll bring that in. So just to sort of come into presence. So if you would just, you can have your eyes open or you can close your eyes if you wish, but just begin to tune into the feeling in your body. And so feeling the connection of your feet to the floor and the support underneath you where you're sitting. And following your breath. You have a very particular pattern of sunlight, which I imagine you can be aware of as well. So actually that might be a connection that we get more interested in. Just if you pay attention to the light for a moment, just from where I'm standing, there's probably more light on one side of your face than the other. Maybe you can feel that. And if you were lying, in bed in a dark room, there might be something you would notice if I asked you to pay attention to your eyes. But given that you have more light coming in one side, I wonder if you can even sense maybe your left eye and your right eye. One is more exposed to the light, and maybe there's even a way that you adjust the muscles around your eyes for that. So that begins to get into another sort of general way I like to check in, which is your sense of space. So you're feeling your body, but you're in a room, right? How far away is the wall to the right or the left, or the window where the sunlight is coming in? And then what happens if you include sound in your awareness? And sound helps us to map space. So obviously you can hear my voice, but when I don't speak, what other sounds do you hear?
It's pretty quiet here.
It's pretty quiet, huh?
I'm in the country, so it's
Oh, you're in the country.
I'm in the country, so and there's snow on the ground, so
Oh,
it's pretty muffled. There is a road, but there are no, cars come occasionally, but it's quiet right now.
yeah. Well, just hearing you say that changes my feeling, because I imagine myself in the countryside with snow on the ground. It changes my experience. I've got a 6-lane road outside my window, but you might ask yourself, just even though this is the norm for you, how that's impacting you too, that quiet, right? And even just tuning into the quiet.
For me, it makes me feel more spacious, that quiet. 'Cause I was
Yeah,
recently back in the city in New York, and the contrast to the noise and the bustle was, I yearned for this.
right, right. And I imagine if you just in your mind you go to New York City, you can feel a somatic change inside of you. There's a sort of a busyness maybe that comes in.
Maybe more of a tightness. I
A
feel like
tightness. Okay. Yeah.
maybe just
Right.
the it, maybe.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you have a nice spacious room there as well, which is nice. Notice your breathing. Notice the sound of your breathing. And notice what's the difference between the sound of your inhalation and your exhalation. And then if for a moment you were to hold your breath, then the sound of your breath goes away, right? So one thing that can be interesting, it sounds like your environment is very quiet. But even if, because you're indoors, there might be an appliance buzzing. I'm in front of my computer and I can hear my computer. But if you can hear any other sound, one thing is to notice I hear this sound right now as I breathe in. And then I hear this next sound as I breathe out. And then if I hold my breath, then I just hear what's around me without my breath.
Well, it's interesting. I can deliberately make a sound as I exhale, but I can not make a sound.
Right, right. Well, and if you're not congested, any breath sound is likely to be very slight. But just pausing to listen to the sound of your own breath, in fact, because it's a slight sound, it just wakes us up to the hearing sense in that way. And now something you may or may not have ever really thought about, but we were talking about your eyes a moment ago, and if you've sort of got light in one eye more than the other, you might feel that difference, right? So I can see it looks like your eyes are closed, but even though they're closed, would you say that one eye is more tightly shut than the other? Yeah, yeah. Or if you go ahead and open your eyes so that you are seeing and their eyes are open, but does one eye feel more open? Probably subtle.
Subtle.
Yeah. But in any case, there's a feeling of each eye. It might be different.
Yeah.
And so now I'll just ask you to bring your attention to your right ear. Just put your attention on your right ear. And you can just sort of imagine, where is it on the side of my head? It's not physically being touched in any way, but just see what happens to your attention. And then shift to your left ear. And so, of course, the location of your attention shifts. But notice also, if you go back to your right ear and then you go to your left ear, if you compare them a bit, if you sense a difference, and like we were just doing with the eyes, I'll give you a possible way of talking about it, which is, does it feel like one of your ears is more open than the other?
Yes.
Yeah, can you say more, like how you experience that?
It feels like the left ear is more open. It's more, I think, receptive right now to the sun and the light. Or that's what it feels like right now. But also, I stand on my left foot. And I'm much more to the left than the right.
Okay. So it sounds like you're describing a general feeling in the body, left and right, that is present for you, and it also shows up in your ear. Like if I ask you, when you breathe, does it feel like you take more air into your left lung than your right lung?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I would have guessed, although, we can't be totally positive. So now, if you were to pay attention to the space of the room, so in other words, putting your attention out beyond your body, but let's use a listening word. Well, let's use that word. If you listen to the left side of the room, just listen to the left side of the room and feel your breath and feel how you embody yourself, in your sitting. And then shift to listening to the right side of the room. And again, be with your breath and your overall sense of how grounded you are and just your general experience. But do you kind of prefer the feeling on one side?
Yes, it's more of an effort on the right,
Mhm.
on the left, so I'm totally present there.
Right.
As soon as I think of the right ear, obviously I'm shifting a little to the right,
Mm-hmm.
expanding the whole right side.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do it, but I have to put a little more effort into embodying it.
Uh-huh. So expanding out to the left, it's just more natural than going to the right. Yeah. And so if you would now just, well, let's try one other thing as well. Could you just slowly turn your head as if to look over one shoulder and then over the other and just see what you experience, and just turn the amount that's totally comfortable, not important how far you go, but to again compare the feeling on the two sides. Mm-hmm. And then go the other way. Mm-hmm. So it seems like you turn a little further to the left.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's just explore the turning for a moment. Just in a very simple way. Yeah, you can face any way you like. You might have a different experience now with the light, but that's okay. So just in a really casual way, just look out onto the horizon, out towards the window, and then move your eyes along the wall to one side and let your head turn, let your shoulders turn, any part of your body that wants to follow, but like you're scanning along the wall at the height of your eyes. Great. And go back the other way. And just go left and right. And you don't necessarily have to make a large movement, but just feel the sense of rotation, and you're working with the eyes to sort of lead the movement. And I can see that you're allowing one knee to come forward, and looks like maybe you're even sliding on your chair a little bit, pushing the floor, letting one knee come down in front. So that's all just fine. Nice way to do the movement. We're talking about listening, but I just can't get over the light. So you can probably feel like as you turn that the light shines across your body in different ways, right? You can put your attention on the light. So if you even just, you can keep doing the movement, but think, I'm trying to splash different parts of my body with sunlight. It's a way of shifting your attention so that I don't see a large change in your movement, but I wonder if it feels different to begin to do that. And I imagine just by the sort of brilliance of the light that I can see that I can probably sense a change in temperature. Yeah, cool. So now you're turning to the right, and could you just stay turned to the right for a moment? And bring your attention to your left ear. And you actually turn quite far, maybe come back a little towards the middle, turn a little to the right, but not quite that far. Yeah, just pause there. So now your left ear, we could say, is pointed at the front of the room. So would you now do a movement just like you were doing before, where you're going to turn all the way to the other side, but rather than tracking what you see, think that you're listening with your left ear to a moving object that's moving from the front of the room to the back of the room. And just So you can turn back to the middle and to the left, but really be leading the movement with your left ear.
So going both ways.
Yeah, so as you're turned to the right, that just means that your left ear is pointed at the front of the room. But if you come back to the middle, then your left ear is pointed to the left. And if you turn further to the left, your left ear is pointed to the back wall.
Oh, wow, that's totally different.
Yeah. And so if you come back and turn to the right, now your left ear is at the front of the room. So even though your eyes are still kind of going left and right, what you're thinking is, no, I'm taking my left ear to listen to the front of the room and then the back of the room. And just feel how, yeah, you mentioned it's different already. You want to say more about it?
Ah, it's a different perspective because I'm shifting my attention to somewhere else on the body. So it feels especially different when I'm turning to the left.
Yeah. Okay.
It's almost as if, I almost feel that when I do it more from the ear than the eyes, I'm getting taller. It's more like it's spiraling up the spine differently.
Right. Right.
I don't know if it's actually happening, but that's the sensation.
Yeah, cool. So just pause for a moment. And you did movements to both sides, clearly, but the attention became one-sided. And so we asked this question before, but let's make it a reference that we keep coming back to. So just notice how open is my left ear. Like imagine if your ear was like a mouth that you could open and close. How open does it feel compared to the right?
It feels like twice the size of the right now.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah. So now turn a little to the left and just think my right ear is pointed to the front of the room. And then turn to both sides again, but as if you're listening from your right ear. And of course, your right ear felt different before we began, but it's also hadn't had the opportunity. So really even take more time here. Yeah, and something I'm noticing is when you turn to the right there, there's also a sense, and maybe it's because I asked you to listen to the wall behind you, it's almost like you're reaching your right ear a little back towards the wall. And so that's a great addition. As you keep going, really think that you could allow your head to move a little, out beyond your pelvis in whichever direction as you're going, right? So then turn to the left, but your right ear can kind of reach towards the front of the room. Yeah, and your head comes a little out towards your knees, right? And as you do that, sort of, sometimes I call this the eavesdropping movement, because you imagine putting your ear on the wall to listen to what's being said in the pantry or whatever. Yeah. And you notice if you reach, so let's do that. You turn to one side. Okay, you turn to the left, but now reach your right ear towards the front of the room to, what are they saying? What's going on outside my window? And then turn yourself to the left.
To the right, you mean?
To the right, thank you. And then reach your right ear, right? But also feel how you're lengthening the right side of your neck. And even you might feel the ribs under your right armpit as you reach with your right ear. They do something. Yeah.
That's interesting. Actually, you really get into those armpit ribs if you do that. That's kind of neat.
Yeah. So come back to the middle and just rest. And we added another little piece there, but just to sort of, for our curiosity as we go on, what do you notice now about your left ear and your right ear?
Well, the right ear has caught up to the left ear. The left ear is still a tiny bit bigger, but the right ear feels enlarged.
Yeah. And, you know, we could make up a lot of explanations, and what's fun is we never know exactly how to explain these things. But one of the stories I make up in my mind is like, well, you told me that, you know, you've had difficulties with your right hand, and that may or may not seem to have much to do with hearing, but there's a sort of a trauma on the right side of the body. So there might be contraction there. You know, there could be other reasons, of course, that have to do with other questions. But, and then what we've done, as I said, isn't necessarily about improving hearing, but we've been working with the attention. So you gave attention to one ear and something happened, and then you gave attention to the other ear, and there's this feeling of catching up. Huh. Cool. Well, so let's play with this another way. So if you close your eyes for a moment and come back to sound. And for a moment, even though probably there's a feeling that the sounds just hit your ears and you hear what's there to hear, but think that you're listening out of your left ear. You might find that your weight wants to come over the left sit bone. And feel the breath. And in the spirit of what we just did, that we can sort of reach with the ears. How do you feel the space of the room to the left? Do you feel that it's welcome? Do you feel like moving into the space out to the left, you know, would be nice? And then think that you're listening with the right ear. And you just described to me that, you know, something shifted, but that the right ear's still not quite the way the left ear feels. So notice also if you listen out into the space to the right, or that sense of length in the neck or in the armpit, is it as available here, or right? Because another way we can think of, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, think that you're going to listen with the left ear and then listen with the right ear, and invite a small shifting of your weight left and right. But you might have the experience, if one direction is simpler than the other, you could say, well, you know, my body feels, whatever word you want, more lubricated, more coordinated in this direction. But you could also think of it in terms of space, or even almost like a psychological or emotional experience, like I'm attracted to going in this direction. I feel maybe some resistance to moving over here. Yeah. So you're nodding. Does that work for you?
Yeah, totally. No, I feel when I listen to the left, it's easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
To the right, I have to effort more. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's not as simple, and it's not there, as we said in the beginning. When you asked me that in the beginning, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
There's gunk, there's stuff that's not
Right.
going with somehow.
Right. Well, so this is a funny thing, but as far as I can tell, if you look forward out of the window, but you're in communication with me, my voice is coming to you from the right side of the room. So if you were to just spin around and look at the back wall and put your feet on the other side of the stool for a moment, just, yeah. But now just listening to me, is it a more comfortable experience to listen to me as you sit this way and I'm speaking into your left ear?
Interesting.
Could be a subtlety. So, but it's another thing to experiment with. Just, I guess I should keep speaking so that you can test it out. Anything you notice?
Yeah, I think it is more comfortable hearing you out of my left ear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And so the thing about that, you know, we could make up big stories, but I would say what's valuable is simply to be aware of what's more comfortable, right? My assumption would be, I've done this kind of thing myself, that we're all going to have a little difference, right? But to know, one ear feels more open than the other, something like that. Yeah, so you're facing me now. Maybe we've equalized my voice into your two ears. So just close your eyes for a moment and listen. And then what I'm going to ask you to do in a moment is to continue listening, but you're going to listen inside your body. So I'm going to ask you to bring your hands up and cover your ears. Okay, uncover your ears. Good, that was a test. You can actually hear me. Otherwise, it gets very difficult to. But what did you hear?
What do you mean? What did I hear when?
Yeah, can you describe any of what you heard?
When
Yeah, so give it a try for another 30 seconds, and then I'll ask you the question: how many distinct sounds can you hear? And I'll just lead the witness a little bit. I think there's at least 3 sounds that we can hear when we cover our ears.
I'm not sure what I'm hearing. I hear something, but I don't quite know what it is.
So can you hear your heartbeat?
Yes.
Great. And as you breathe, can you hear your breathing? Might actually be a little louder than when.
Yeah, it's much easier this way.
Yeah. Okay. And so if you uncover your ears for a moment, so the breath and the heartbeat, and those are 2 things that we don't necessarily notice if we're not paying attention when our ears are uncovered, but when we block out the outside sound, we kind of amplify. And you might know there's hearing aids that work by conducting sound through the skeleton, through the bones, and that's starting to happen. So if the blood is pumping through my hand and I'm holding it up, anyway, I don't know the exact physics, but my experience has been that the heartbeat and the breath are quite amplified. And then the third sound that I look for, what I refer to it as best as I can tell, is the rushing of the blood.
That's what I think I heard the first time. That's what I didn't know how to describe.
Yeah, it's like.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was.
Right. So I'll invite you to cover your ears again in a moment and see if you can pick those 3 things out. And then so far, you've been able to hear me when I speak. So you might notice there's my breath, my heartbeat, the rushing of the blood, and maybe, although I don't know with the snow on the ground out in the countryside, but see if you hear something, far away on the outside, even though what's amplified is the internal sounds.
Okay.
So what do you notice?
So by paying attention, I can hear all 3. I couldn't hear anything else, but by paying attention, I could hear the air on the exhale going out, not so much on the inhale going in.
Okay, yeah.
But I could hear it going out. I could hear the heartbeat because because you asked me to, right? Because I was focusing it, and I could hear the blood rushing, but I didn't hear any.
Right.
Any.
Right. And something that I felt being with you and just observing you, but I wonder how it felt to you. It just seemed like you're in a different state of listening.
Yes, I think I'm calmer.
Yeah.
Would say, I think doing this practice that we've done so far puts you in a more parasympathetic state, shall we say?
Lowering the activation. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're doing that deeper listening.
Right.
And I think it's a big difference doing it. And I can imagine even lying down, it would make even a bigger difference if you do it.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's no limit to the number of positions and things that we could do. Although I think there's something valuable about working with hearing and upright, because typically maybe we're in bed with someone and having a conversation in a different relationship to gravity, but usually we're upright. And, if I hear a sound over there, what my instinct to do is turn until that sound is halfway between my ears, and then my eyes are looking at the thing, right? And that's kind of an automatic thing that we do. Yeah, so the other thing to notice is, so let's do something different. Just take a couple fingers and find your pulse. So you kind of get a touch sense of the heartbeat. And your ears are open. But as you listen to your heartbeat, also be aware of your breath. And so you can notice I breathe in, and there's a pulse and another pulse and another pulse. And then there's several pulses as I breathe out. And so it's just a rhythmic sense, right? There's a rhythmic relationship between these two ongoing biological rhythms. They may or may not line up. As you begin to pay attention, you might feel, oh, I want to breathe out after 3 heartbeats or something like that. But there's just a kind of something that our body is doing.
It really slows you down. I mean, if you pay attention, you can really, you can slow down the breath to match.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting that without the ear thing. I wonder what would happen if you did that and you wore earmuffs or something.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep playing with this. But if you take your hand down, just notice if you're without your hand, if you're still a little more present to the heartbeat. It might be more of a proprioceptive sense than a hearing.
Yes.
And yeah, okay. And so you're in the quiet countryside, but even if it's mostly silence, listen to the outside world, but include your breath and your heartbeat as part of what you're hearing. So you have a sense of there's a relationship between my internal rhythms and the external rhythms around me. And by the way, just notice, of course, this is dependent because you've got the window out to the left, but are you listening more out of the left ear, more out of the right ear? Yeah.
Okay. I'm listening more out of the left.
Yeah. Okay. So would you now cover your left ear with your left hand, just your left ear?
Wow, I can feel the difference. It feels like the right ear just blossomed open.
Yeah, well, so if I keep talking to you to give you a little bit of an external sound source, you notice when I speak, it probably makes sense to listen to the right, because the right ear is definitely more open to the outside world. And yet, if you wanted to hear your breath your heartbeat and the rushing of the blood, where would your attention go? And so if we just recognize you've covered your left ear and your right ear is open, would you now do what you did before and alternate between listening to your left ear and then to your right? But it's like you're listening inside and then you're listening outside. And if it invites your body to shift, that's great. And really allow, yeah, so maybe listen, think of listening to your left elbow. Have your elbow really directly out to the side. It's like you're listening to your left elbow. And you could even maybe, like that idea of the eavesdropping before, what if your left elbow drifted to the left as you listen to it? Huh? Yeah, but then you want to hear the outside world out to the right. And of course, your arm makes your body weight asymmetrical as well. And then listen to the left. You reach with your left elbow. And then as you go back, you could actually think, what if there was some sound out to the left that was too loud and you're actually shying away from it? You're moving to the right, but you're trying to get away from a very loud sound to the left. Yeah, and just notice if thinking of organizing your movement as towards and away from the left, how that changes it. Or you could really think, I want to hear what's going on out to the right, but then the sound out to the right gets a little too loud and I want to move away from the sound out to the right. I shrink my right ear away from the sound to the right. Yeah. Okay. Bring your arm down and take a rest. And so again, you did a movement where you shifted, you moved left and right, but one ear was open and one ear was closed. And of course, as we pointed out, the arm, right, you had to support the weight of one arm up in the air like that. So actually, just for a moment, would you come to stand? Huh? And just notice, where's your weight? Where does it sort of, we just did something asymmetrical, right? So often when we do that and then we tune in, we notice an asymmetry. So how would you describe how you're naturally kind of wanting to bear your weight right now?
Actually, it's more even than it usually is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I have more weight right now on the back of the right heel.
Uh-huh.
And generally, I'm here, right? More on the left. And now I feel actually much more balanced.
Interesting. Okay. And your sense of how open is your left ear and how open is your right ear? How would you describe that now?
Almost fairly even.
Fairly even.
Fairly even. Yeah, I feel the right ear has really enlarged.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning, you talked about the space to the right and to the left. And in the beginning, the space to the left is much bigger. And now I feel it's also increased my peripheral vision and my
Right.
right. So I feel I'm much more in the middle right now.
Okay. And earlier your bias was to have more of an opening on the left, and then we just explored a movement where your right ear was open. And we haven't done the other side, but the right ear was sort of a little behind the left ear. So now you have a sense of symmetry. And so one other question, just to add something. Notice how your arms are hanging. I can see your right hand. I can't see your left hand so much, but no, that's okay. Well, okay. Thanks. You can turn, but just for yourself and your feeling. And as you face me, I'll get a little more of a visual. But notice where the palms of your hands are. Yeah, just stand. Just stand. Let your arms hang. But would you get the feeling that one of your hands is more turned towards your body or more turned away?
Yeah. Yes, the right hand is more turned towards the body, which would make sense because the right ear is more turned towards the body, and the left hand is a little more externally rotated. So yes.
You said your right ear is more turned towards the body?
Well, it feels because of that. When I felt it in my hands, I guess I just went then back. I went to the ear.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like the left ear is a little more back, and the right ear is a little more forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When I went to the hands, but when I wasn't at the hands, so if I don't go to the hands, I feel more even. As soon as I put my attention to the hands, it, I think, brings me back to my pattern, which is to the left. That's
okay. Yeah, yeah. So just stand for a moment, okay. And with either arm, well, let's use the right arm. Turn, just rotate your right arm so that the palm faces away from your body, and then turn it back towards your body. And keep doing that, just gently and easily. But you feel that when you turn your arm away, it invites a kind of, you don't have to rotate. You don't have to rotate, just rotate the arm. But you feel it sort of invites the right side of your chest a little open, right? When you rotate the arm out. See if you can do it without bringing your left shoulder forward. You just face forward and you externally rotate the right arm. And then you turn it towards yourself.
Oh, so
yeah. You're turning the arm in and out. The palm goes away and towards you. As you do that, if you pay attention, do you notice a change in the feeling in your right ear when the arm is turned towards and turned away?
Yes. As soon as I turn out, it's like my right ear is reaching out.
Uh-huh.
And I go in. Oh, that's so interesting. It's like getting kind of pressed in.
Yeah. So you remember when I asked you to shift left and right, but not just to move your ear towards a sound you wanted to hear, but move your ear away from a sound that might be too loud, and you.
Yes.
Yeah. So the muscles in your ear, they do that. If you're like you mentioned, you're in New York City, and an ambulance goes by, there's a contraction that happens in your ear to protect you from the very loud sound, right? Or if someone just, talked loudly in your ear and it was unpleasant, you would sort of shrink back, right?
Totally. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting, that connection. It now feels I'm even more firmly on the, even more even, and it feels like the right ear is almost reaching more out than the left.
Yeah. Well, so just for a moment, do the movement with your left arm and see if you can feel a change in your left ear and what it invites. If you were to turn your palm outwards and keep it outwards, and I said, listen to the sound to the left, listen to the space, the room to the left. And then I said, now please turn your palm back towards your body and listen to the room out to the left. And if you just
closes it closes it.
Okay, so it's like it's less convenient to listen out to the left with your arm like that.
Totally, and it's much easier to listen to the right.
Yeah. Turn both of your palms to face the left, and then turn both of your palms to face the right, and then listen to one side of the room and the other in the way that feels natural to you as you do it. And then if you reverse it, in other words, whichever direction you were listening to when both of your palms were faced to the left, now listen in the other direction. And same thing when your palms go to the right. But just, are you finding again that there's one coordination that's really preferable for you?
Totally.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, come back and sit in your chair. Yeah. And so let's just play with what we were doing before and go to the other side. So cover your right ear with your right hand. See if you can find those three sounds. And then alternate your attention, and maybe you can, if you feel that you wish to move your body and shift in space, you can, but listen into your right arm and then out into the left side of the room, back and forth.
Wait, say that. Can you say that again?
So you're just listening once to the left and once to the right again, but now it's your right ear that's covered. So you're listening once to the inside of you and once to the outside of you.
So when I'm here, I'm listening with my right ear, right? Even though it's covered.
Right. It's like there's a sound inside your right elbow. And then there's a sound out in the room. Okay, take a break. And just to do another thing we've done before so we can sort of see what's unfolding, just go back to thinking that you're looking with your eyes, but turn to look left and right. So just scan along the horizon with your eyes left and right. And see how that is now. And just to spell it out, I'm sure you've already felt it, but of course you're doing all kinds of things with your spine. You're doing all kinds of things with your ribs and where you're bearing your weight over your sit bones. So we keep talking about hearing in the ears, but we're using it to organize the whole body, right? And then if you look as far as you can to the right, just turn to the right as far as you can go comfortably. And then if you switch to listening out of your right ear, can you turn another half a degree? And it looked like you did. So come through the middle with your eyes, and then when you reach the limit of where you can see with your eyes, listen with your left ear.
I'm sorry, then go to the left? Or
Yeah, it's like you're listening, you're looking with your eyes, and then I can't turn anymore, and I listen with my ear.
yeah.
And you might, yeah, one side and the other.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's certainly more than 1 degree.
Yeah.
I have to try it on the other side. That's interesting.
Yeah, because there's a sense of I can't do anything more with my neck. But what I don't think about is all my attention is on vision. As soon as my attention goes to what's present to my ear, suddenly I find something else in my spine that I didn't know about.
You know what it does? It gets these vertebra. I mean, the vertebra from the nose holes down, it gets, when you do the ears, if you think about it, the vertebra right here, that's amazing.
Yeah. The highest vertebra in your spine is more or less between your ears.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's, I don't know why we don't always turn that way.
Well, so now try this experiment again, but so just we're going to go back to covering the ears and really hear those sounds, right? Those three sounds, but then begin to turn left and right with your ears covered. Yeah, try having your elbows straight out so you can have a sense of listening to your elbows. and then follow your elbows as you turn left and right. Okay. Good. Yep.
It feels like much more limited.
Yeah. Well, the arms also create a limitation, don't they? And so if you take the limitation away and you turn again now, just see if there's anything different in the turning. And just know that at any given moment, you could have your attention in your eyes or in your ears, so you can play with it.
Got better to the right, big time.
Yeah, cool. So I'll give you, I mean, you can really keep playing with this. And I know that you play with movement, you know, when you're not hanging out with me. So you can probably invent some more things. But if you cover one ear, and with that ear covered, just take a moment to again feel or hear or listen, find your breath, your heartbeat. Maybe the rushing of the blood. There's the outside world, at the very least, hearing my voice. And now reach over with your right hand to hold your left elbow. Maybe just reach in front. Yeah. And now just very gently with your index finger, tap your elbow and listen to the sound. It's a lot louder than it looks to me. And see if you can tap slowly and be aware of your heartbeat, your breath, and this new rhythm you're making. And then begin to turn left and right as you continue doing that. And you're likely to find one direction of turning to be much more convenient than the other, but just do what you can. Staying present to your heartbeat, your breath, the tapping, the sound of your blood, sound of my voice, the sunlight passing across your face. Beautiful. Take a rest.
It's challenging to keep track of all those things.
Sure. Well, this is one of those examples of something we do that's, as you say, it's a challenge, but just feel how you are when you let go of it now.
More grounded.
Huh. And feel your left ear, feel your right ear.
Left ear feels bigger, actually, right now.
Left ear feels bigger. So that was the one that was just covered, which seems like, the ear was closed. But then again, the attention was with the left ear, probably, right? Because the sound was coming in that ear.
Sound was coming through that. So the attention was totally on the left ear. Wow, that's interesting.
So cover your right ear, find the three sounds, and then when you feel like you've found them, you bring your left hand over, do a very small, slow percussion with this finger, and then you add the turning.
Wow, it's interesting. I don't hear the percussion as well in the right ear as I do on the left.
Mm.
Very interesting.
Are you tapping on the bone or are you tapping on soft tissue?
Oh, on the bone.
Yeah.
I hear it, but it's just not as good. But that's interesting.
So just notice if there's anywhere you can do less work, even in the listening. Very nice. Okay.
On the right ear has now opened.
Cool.
The attention, yeah.
Cool. So let's just go back to our sort of beginning scan and just see how we are. So your breath, and in particular, you might notice the movement of the breath through your chest or maybe in your belly, and feel the left and right sides. Feel your sense of grounding on the stool and your feet against the floor. How are you balanced left and right? And then move your attention out into the room. Remembering what we said about hearing being 360 degrees. We didn't ask about the space behind you, but you might just have a sense of, is the space of the room and your relationship to the space, is it different than when you began? What's your relationship to the very quiet soundscape that you're in? Is there any different sense of connection there with the sound? And I can't resist it just pointing out again the light, right? Because it's, you know, when you practice at this time of day, it's part of the experience. And even though it was sort of incidental, we did take note of it as we went along. So notice your perception of the light and if anything's new about that. Yeah, and then I'd love it to just hear any reflections you have at this point, what you're feeling, what you noticed, what that was like.
Well, the light isn't the same now, so it's not as
Right.
like one side. So that felt very different. And the difference was I could really feel the right side. I could feel the space on the right side of me, whereas when I began, I was very aware of the left side. And I started playing at some point because we were talking about the ears of the space behind. So I was thinking image-wise of the ears opening like this. That was the image I had, going here and then going in back. So I was playing with that while we were doing the lesson. And it was more so now having a sense more of the space of the back of the skull or behind.
Yeah. Now, just one thing you mentioned that could be interesting, because when we do something like this, it's like, well, what do I take away from this, right? But if you just sit right now, and again, we use this metaphor that you're Your ears could be like mouths, right? So if you just sit and imagine that your ears are these wide open mouths that wanted to take a bite of an apple, right? And just feel your overall feeling of posture, right? And now just imagine, I don't know if there was a really loud sound or whatever, but the ears begin to close. The ears are not wanting sound to come in. But what happens throughout your whole self?
Well, everything pulls back. But it's also connected to the eyes, because as soon as you open the ears, the eyes go to the corners and they widen, right?
Right.
And as soon as you kind of imagine that sound, the eyes will narrow. And when the eyes go in like that, it contracts the whole face, it contracts everything. So
Right.
that image of the ears opening is a beautiful one. I like it. I've never thought of that one before. And I also felt in doing it, as I visualize that, there's a lengthening that happens in the spine, a very natural lengthening that happens without having to do it. It just, it's almost an automatic. And I think the belly relaxes a little. As soon as you imagine the sound, the lower belly tightens and everything pulls in.
Right, right. And the way I make sense of that is, I mean, you can kind of think about it as if you're a cell and you have two movements, opening and closing, right? And I think this is why when you when you hang the arms and you do the rotation in and out, you know, if I turn my arms towards me, it feels like I'm closing things. If I open out, it feels, you know, my chest gets open, but there's a sense of being more open, or like we talk about in relation to other people, like making yourself vulnerable, showing, you know, opening up in that way, or being closed off. But the thing is, with our ears, we tend to have this sense that sound just hits my ears. I don't do anything. And yet we can have this idea of opening, and it does create this, you know, I've also felt that feeling of the spine. And if you think about the movements left and right, if I am trying to listen over here, I really am trying to move away from over there. And so as you shift, you could sort of say, is one ear opening and the other one closing, right? It's not a thing we have to remember, but there's a certain logic to it, because I actually want to get my ear closer to the thing I want to hear, or I want to get my ear further away from the thing I don't want to hear. So just listening into that, it begins to wake up this whole connection. The other thing I would say is, just like if you think of resonance, which is how sound is vibration, right? If I close down, like I'm less resonant. The more open I am, just like you're in a big church or something where it's resonant, right? So how resonant is the chamber of my body to the sounds that are coming in?
Yeah.
Good. Beautiful. What's your overall, I don't know, before, after, in terms of how you're feeling now?
I feel very, very relaxed and present, and it's exciting. I've learned a lot. I mean, this is nothing I've ever played with before. You know, I've done a lot of Feldenkrais and a lot of lessons, but never with this intention and attention to the ears. And so that was new, novel, and intriguing. It makes me want to do more.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, since you're so involved with Feldenkrais practice already, I would just suggest to you, any Feldenkrais lesson that you're already playing with, you might just find out, how might I add the ears? And I mean, a simple connection to make is, well, the ears are up on top of my head. So hearing is one way to think of movements of the head, you know, which are obviously important in all kinds of Feldenkrais lessons. So that's one connection you can make.
Yeah, no, and I'm thinking also of rolling too, you know, how that would, curious what that would do,
right?
You know,
right.
Attention more to one ear as you're rolling versus.
Right, when you roll on the ground, you put one ear to the ground and one ear to the sky, and you can geek out on that too. Well, thanks so much, Suzanne, for joining me today.
Oh, great.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so take care.
Okay, thanks a lot, Seth. Bye-bye.